Today's video, we're going to talk about LinkedIn ads versus Google ads. Why one makes more for your business than the other. Now, the key thing here is one will make more for the other, but it depends on what business you're in, which one of these is actually going to make you more. There's no universal rule here that says LinkedIn or Google ads is just universally better than the other. I'm going to give you several different markets where I'm going to go through the offers that we ran, how we did it, and then what the actual numbers were that we were able to achieve in terms of not clicks or any of that basic stuff, but the closing rate on leads, cost per lead, cost per sale, so you can understand just what the potential of each one of these things are, given that most people are just going to gravitate towards Google ads as a whole. They're going to say, I'm just doing Google ads. A lot of times you can make more money on LinkedIn, and then vice versa, of course. More so with people leaning on Google ads, because Google ads is basically, in a nutshell, just sales. You don't have to get fancy. You're looking for accounting service, we offer it. Boom. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be done to monetize those searches better than your competition that also want those searches and want those customers. On LinkedIn, you got to get creative, and people don't like to get creative, and they don't like risk or perceived risk. Oh, maybe what I try might not work. So I'm just going to do Google ads because I know what people want there. For that matter, don't limit yourself to just Google ads. And then if you are doing LinkedIn, you say Google ads is too expensive, you just got to understand on Google ads what it actually takes to make money, which is you just got to simply outdo the competition, as I mentioned a minute ago. Do you have better ads, better landing pages than them? If so, you'll make money, because people advertising on the top of Google, and you basically usually see 4 ads at the top of Google or several, there's a very, very good chance that somebody's making good money there. Maybe not all of them, but some people, and that money is your money if you could simply do something better than them, so that Google prefers to show you over the people that are there on Google, or that even that leading guy that's making all the money. So I'll go over all the finer details about these two platforms, which one of them you want to do, or potentially both, what you need to know, and how to actually evaluate which one's right for your market. So getting into the content, now I've got Google on one side, linked on the other, and then of course the 3 different individual niche markets where we ran ads on both. So you can see the kind of performance difference that we had on both for your company. So first of all, we had an outsourced CFO service. So this is a chief financial officer. So if you need somebody to go through all your books, your receivables, and understand how money should be allocated in your company, or where expenses can be cut, more so that side, you can actually hire a outsourced CFO if you can't hire one in-house, because for the most part, unless you're doing $100 million a year and sales are greater, you're probably not going to have an in-house full-time CFO. At that point, it would make sense. So if you're doing $15 million a year, that's the time when you get what they call a fractional CFO that'll come in, look at all your books, say, why are you spending this much on pay-per-clicks? Why are you actually hiring these people here when you could, instead of doing that, you could get a staffing agency and cut these costs, blah, 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 blah. Or, use a BPO firm, whatever, and help you understand where cuts can be made and where you can save money primarily, okay? With that said, people know about this service already. So it's a good candidate for advertising on Google ads. And even if it did it, technically could monetize Google searches, people looking for how to save money in business, and then having your ad show up. We do that kind of thing all the time, but that's not what we're talking about in this particular case. It's just the classic showing up for people typing in fractional CFO, outsourced CFO, and so forth, okay? With that said, we were paying right around $95 a lead for leads on Google search. Of that, we were closing about 12% of those leads, and we're getting about $792 cost per acquisition, okay? So $292 cost per client acquisition itself, which is an amazing number, by the way, because these clients are worth around $10,000 to $20,000 each. So we're doing incredibly well on Google search. Now, this did not happen, by the way, just as a caveat, if you try to do this for yourself. A lot of people give up on B2B campaigns on Google search. They're the longest campaigns that it takes to work that you can run. Forget about making money the first 6 months, or even the first 12 months in a lot of cases. You start making good money on Google search year 2, because it takes a long time to get your campaigns broken in. And especially so in a competitive market where there's a lot of other guys advertising already, cycling in and out of those spots on Google on the top of Google, and where your good money doesn't come in until like year 3 through 5 and beyond, because you need time to just for the algorithm to take you seriously. Then you got to do your testing. What's the exact ad copy that's going to work the best? What's the exact headlines that are going to work the best on your landing page? And drilling it down to that. But if you do all that stuff correctly, you could get a 10-to-1 return on your ad spend. In most markets, B2B, it just might not happen until year 2 or 3 or 4 into the process. Okay? Whereas it takes 6 to 12 months just to get to break even. Now, we did that, and we also ran a campaign on LinkedIn as well. Now, first thing you got to know about LinkedIn, though, is whatever you're doing on Google isn't necessarily what you're going to do on LinkedIn. Sometimes it's going to be similar, not completely the same. In a lot of cases, though, it's going to be completely different. Why? Because if you go to LinkedIn in this particular case, and you say, hey, we have Outsource CFO services, hire us, you'll save tons of money. A lot of people are going to say, I don't care. Mainly because if I want that, yeah, that sounds interesting and all, but if I want that, I now know I can go to Google a week from now, type in Outsource CFO service and find a company that does it. You've educated me for free, essentially. There's no compelling reason to jump on this ad right now, okay? And even if you, in the B2B space, say you could save money or whatever, that just makes you look desperate. Your best bet is to lead in with information in a lot of cases. Or you reframe what you're offering to get them simply into a sales meeting, which is what we did in this case. We use this exact method in several markets now to make money on LinkedIn ads. And what is that? Well, we ran an ad saying, first of all, it's going to be targeted correctly to the people that are going to be the decision makers in the companies that will buy your product or service here. But with that said, and obviously LinkedIn is mainly B2B, but there's also market products that we've sold on LinkedIn that weren't B2B focused itself. And I could go into that, but I'm not. For that matter, on the B2B side though, what you ultimately need, if you just take a step back, is you need sales meetings in order to make money. Why not just ethically bribe people to get into an actual sales demo and then make your sales that way versus trying to pitch your product or service right then and there on the spot on LinkedIn and then hoping they want a demo. If your salespeople are good enough and you know that company needs your product or service and would benefit from it, you're better off in a lot of cases just asking them to go on the demo and pay them to go on a demo. And then once they're forced to be on the demo, they hear what they're supposed to hear, and then you'll close 5% of those and you have a working campaign. So in this particular case, we said we'll give you a $20 Starbucks gift card for a 15-minute demo. And we didn't mention what we were going to sell. That was the deal, which that sounds trivial to maybe some of you guys, like, I wouldn't waste 15 minutes of my time for that. Tons of people would. And this will particularly work when you're selling to just Joe Schmo employees, not CEOs that their time is essentially worth more than that. But for your average HR manager, this is great. So with that said, we were generating leads for about $30 a lead doing this in terms of ad cost. Then we got the cost of the gift card. I didn't factor that in. However, we were closing 20% of these clients that were in on a demo to an actual client, which that's an astronomically high number. That's just as good as what we're closing over here almost. It's actually technically better. But the reason why the closing rate's better isn't because there's a different salesperson there. It's because the targeting is better. This is a key thing to remember. When you're targeting on LinkedIn or doing any direct response or outbound marketing, you can handpick the people that you want to respond. So if you know, for instance, if you're running a call center services business, you could target the people that, if you got them, would be a $10 million a year account, or you could go after the general public where the average person needs, $20,000 a year worth of services. Well, in a lot of occasions, it would be smart just to go after the whale prospects and only them, because you could spend so much to get a customer. And then even after that, you're still going to be making more money at the end of the day. Well, in this case, it's the same thing. You could target certain size of company on LinkedIn so that if somebody responds, instead of being a mediocre prospect that is going to say, I don't know, it's kind of expensive. It's, no, we have experience in your field. We've got experience working with manufacturing companies coming in, and we've got these 3 case studies here. and you can see exactly what results we got for them, and you're going to get the same results for yourself. And of course, you're targeting people who have the required funding. They're not going to say, oh, it's too expensive. It's just a matter of, does this work or not? Of which the case studies say it does. And that's why your closing rates are higher in this particular case versus Google search, where anybody can click on your ad. Any Joe Schmo can go and type in outsource CFO services on Google. And that's kind of the drawback of doing it, which of course, through the optimization of your campaigns, feeding in data about who buys, the average deal size on who bought, you could actually steer the campaigns to what is producing bigger deals over time and deals that are more likely to close over time as well. But it takes a long, long time to really get that drilled in, where you've generated hundreds, if not thousands of sales already with the machine learning algorithms to kind of figure that out. Whereas on LinkedIn, you could really go through your customer database, find out who buys, why they buy, create separate targeting options, targeting just manufacturing companies and just the HR managers at those companies. So if you got those people on the call, it's a laydown. So with that said, we're paying $150 a lead versus our $792 on Google, blowing the Google results completely out of the water. So Google is still profitable, but in a lot of markets like this, a lot of times it's not even worth it to do Google if you can scale on LinkedIn, which is the crux of the situation though, because if something works on LinkedIn, it's not going to be infinitely scalable. There's going to be a point in which you exhaust the home run prospects that you could target there. And then you got to say to yourself, okay, if we're going to expand what we're making, we got to run an ad on a different platform or figure out how to get other platforms to work. So you run them both anyway. Even though if you're not liking the return you're getting on Google, you can spend time feeding in more conversion data, using that to make your ads more efficient. You can figure out better headlines, landing page headlines, like I was mentioning before. So that's one perfect example of Google versus LinkedIn, how this can actually go for you, how you can run both and how the offer would differ on each platform. Now, the other thing I wanted to mention too, the lifetime value of a customer itself on Google itself, in this particular case, was actually higher. So we were getting a higher closing rate in this particular case. We were actually getting a higher lifetime value of a customer. Not because we couldn't target people that normally buy more, which we can do here, but there's so few people to target there, we can't go that specific with it. If we wanted to narrow down further, we would have gotten a bigger average deal size. On Google, though, even though anybody could click on the ad, the people that do click on the ad and buy, it was their idea to hire an outsourced CFO, so they were more prepared to spend money than the average person that we interrupted over here. So you got to consider all these factors when deciding which way to go. So even though the cost per lead is great here, or cost per sale is great here, or the average lifetime value of the client's greater over here. So you got to run all these numbers ultimately to make a decision at the end of the day, which one you're going to use, how much you should be paying for a lead on each. Okay, this is not rocket science. You got to track your numbers all the way through to a sale, and you got to track ultimately, or you should, import your sales revenue data or average presumed deal size that you think you're going to close on in your ad accounts on both platforms to optimize the ads to maximum profitability for you. You can do this with LinkedIn, you can do this with Google, to where if a lead closes, you can pipe in the revenue data to your ad account to optimize your ads there. You can do the same exact thing on Google, which is called through a Google Click ID that comes through, that you capture when a lead is filling out your form on your site or when they call. And the same thing with LinkedIn, with the LinkedIn Click ID, which is like a serial number that's tied to every unique click that comes through the ad platform. So that's my first case study I wanted to go over here. Secondly, I wanted to go over the virtual safety training company that we had as a client as well for a period of time. This particular company here, what they basically do is, like, normally if you have a lockout tagout procedure at a company, which if you don't know what that is, I actually worked as maintenance and I was like really young for a period of time. And one of the things that they would do is teach you a lockout tagout. So if you're going to work on a machine in a factory, they would want you to actually lock the on-off switch in the off position so that somebody can't come along and be like, I wonder why the machine's not going. And then the person working on the machine is chewed up, and then they're now part of the bacon that's coming out the other side of the machine. So with that said, companies got to train their staff legally wise so that in case something happens, they're not going to be sued ultimately. So they got to do this stuff. Well, we had a client who basically virtualized all this, which is smart. You get a pair of goggles, hand sensors, and you can go through the whole training physically in person versus having to have this done in person without the virtual training gear itself on, okay? So with that said, we ran, again, Google as well as LinkedIn campaigns. But in this particular case, unlike with the outsourced CFO services, we actually had basically the same pitch each time. We're just going at them directly with what we have, which some products and services are so cool, you don't have to get a offer going where you're taking what you're offering and you're saying, our product is got a 15-year warranty, and that be your hook, if you will, to get them to say, hey, I see this is so good, I want to jump on it right now. In this case, we just have to say, you're doing your virtual safety training, you're doing it in person now, you can do it through virtual means, it's cheaper and easier. And we show a video demonstrating how it works. That's all we had to do on LinkedIn. On Google, it's pretty simple. There's already a market for this. There's people searching for virtual fire extinguisher safety training, virtual safety training, and so forth. We target those people on Google, and we're paying about $55 a lead. We're getting a 21% closing rate on those leads, which is about $262 cost per sale that we're generating on and through Google itself. Now, as far as LinkedIn goes now, we're doing, as I mentioned, basically the same thing. We're saying, here, training is going virtual. We work with a bunch of clients that have now switched over this. Why aren't you doing it as well? It's X% cheaper. It's actually better at the end of the day because the person isn't directly involved in the process. And you can enforce that the person actually understands it because there's questions and answers throughout the process as you're doing it. For that matter, $97 a lead on LinkedIn doing this, which is more per lead. It's almost double per lead. 14% closing rates, which is the closing rate is even less than what it is on Google, mainly because somebody on Google who was initially interested in this was their idea, they were trying to buy. It was just a matter of who. The cost per sale is $693, which is basically triple what it is on Google. However, going back to what I was saying before, we have a client though now who we've hand-picked to who we were going to sell to. So we can sell to companies that don't just need to train 50 employees a year. We could target companies that need to train 500 or 5,000 employees a year itself and get those. So you're going after the whales, like I talked about earlier. So that said, okay, we got a 49% increase in our lifetime value of a customer, going after the bigger companies itself. So, which in my opinion, by the way, this is not that big of even a difference here. If we would have figured out and go through all of our customer data and really send it through a data warehouse to where we can find out the companies that spend the most and are willing to spend the most on it, by industry, by even also to what geographies, what states, what cities, we would have had this lifetime value difference would be 200, 300, 400, 500% difference. But we didn't get an opportunity to do that. I couldn't, basically sell the client on doing the work to get the customer data, sending it to the third parties, all that. Even though that should be done every time. If you are in a B2B market, you want to do all that homework so you know how to actually target your ads. At the end of the day, you're going to make more on LinkedIn in a lot of different markets, most markets, than you will on Google, just simply because you can narrow down on LinkedIn in ways you can't narrow down on Google. On Google, you can narrow down by keyword. You can narrow down by, time of the day of the week, which is all great. But the magic really happens when you can narrow down by company size, and then of course on top of that, layering on the geographic stuff and the age stuff. And that's where the magic really happens. So moral of the story here is I highly encourage you to take your customer list, find the top 10%, send it to a data expansion company like Axicom, they'll tell you everything they can about those 10%, what industry they are in, where they're from. Then when you run your LinkedIn ads, narrow it all down to what just is the top 10%. And at least start there. Ultimately, once you've started there, you're making money, you can reinvest in trying to expand it and see how far you can go with expanding it in terms of going after some other companies, company sizes that aren't ideal, but looks like would be extra sales to give you extra profit, even though the margins wouldn't be so great there. So that's another one. Now, before I dip into this next or last final one here, a lot of this stuff is just, it's a boring, tedious work. Finding out who you need to be targeting, figuring out what's going to get them to respond, figuring out how to track your leads coming in, how to actually track your closing rates, how to track what your assumed lifetime value of a customer is, feeding that back into your ad account, then using that to steer your ads while it's still coming out with other testing of ads and hooks. And it's a lot of work to get it done right. The average person who tries to set up their campaigns will spend 15 minutes setting up their campaigns, and then they say, why does it work? Well, the people that you see making millions on this stuff, whether it be Google or LinkedIn, they're spending hundreds, if not thousands of hours on it over time to get that campaign that looks so simple to get it to work. And you can either copy them or you ultimately do it yourself. And at the very least, you should try to, in most cases, copy them if it's possible, and then start testing on top of that. Anyway, if you want somebody to set this up for you in a way that will guarantee work for you, practically speaking, we offer a guaranteed offer at our firm where we'll set it all up for you for free. And unless it increases your profitability of your business a certain minimum amount, we won't take a fee on our end. We essentially are trying to offset our fee by what you make in the beginning with it. If you're interested in that, reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. I also have ad templates available. If we've already done all this for your market already, like you're in one of these markets here or one of the other hundreds of markets we've been in over a decade running this advertising firm, we can sell you the winning ads, landing pages, and so forth that work for your niche market already, and you use it for yourself. We can tell you the results you're going to get with it up front. It's a major shortcut in getting results that you want in your market. I also offer coaching and consulting. I consult agencies all the time, individual business owners on how to make their ads successful. If they're stuck, they can't get their ads to work any better, I'll come in and fix it for them or tell them what to do. Or, ultimately you're contemplating doing something before doing all the work to do it and potentially pulling the rug out on the results that you have now. Run it past me, because I run 50 plus different advertising accounts at any given time. And I know how stuff behaves on these platforms. Reach out to me and set up a call with me. The amount that we charge for calls is nothing compared to what you lose if you run a test that doesn't work. So anyway, if you're interested in that, you can also reach out to me at guaranteedppc.com. If you have any questions about anything I'm covering here, by the way, you can always leave me a comment below. I get back to every single person who leaves me a question or comment on this channel, usually within 24 hours. So with that said, the final case study I wanted to go over here was in reference to an occupational drug testing company. So they did like employee-based drug screening, DOT, drug screening, occupational, other different testing that you have to get to be eligible to work, essentially, either by law or the company requires it. Okay? So normally you would just call a local laboratory and then you would kind of facilitate things that way. Well, there's specialist intermediary companies that manage this for you. For the client that we work with even went one step further, where they had an online platform, a software, if you will, that you could go on there as a HR manager, and as soon as an employee needs certain screening, you could just type them in, if you will, and then ultimately it does all the recommendations for you. Send them here. Ultimately, when the test comes in, we'll actually update the software for you so that you just log in, you can see if the test was done and then what the results were. It takes out basically all the work and in a nice tidy package. So if you're hiring, 500 employees a year, you got to manage all these different people. It solves a lot of headaches for people. So anyway, with that said, we would target people on Google looking for DOT, drug screening, drug testing centers like that. And that market's a little bit challenging because a lot of the people, there's a lot of like stoners and stuff like that want a drug test for themselves to see if they would pass it or not for a job they have coming up. We got to weed that stuff out, ironically. But there's also companies searching for a one-off employee that they want to get a test for, which the goal is to try to get that person to do business with them in the future, hopefully. So we would target people typing in, drug testing and all that, and ideally looking for like drug testing Chicago when they're not inside Chicago, because that's likely to get a business customer versus an individual consumer. That works very well. We got an average cost per sale, given that they had an online platform to buy the test. And this is a different platform than what I was talking about before, where ultimately you type in drug testing Chicago, you get an ad that says that, you're taken to a landing page that has all the centers in Chicago available. You click on one, you put your credit card in, your test is reserved, and then it says, okay, go to this center and, ultimately do X, Y, and Z, and then, you'll be able to get your test done. It's all pre-approved, pre-reserved, all of that. For that matter, that's what we were paying for a transaction, if you will. Given that that's kind of high, but for the back end that they're getting out off of each customer, given that they can, some of them lock them down to do all their testing through them in the future, this is okay. This is profitable. For that matter, on LinkedIn, on the other hand, we were paying way more per transaction than Google. Way more. However, we were able to pin down the exact companies that we wanted to do business with. So on the LinkedIn side, though, we had to change the offer. We couldn't just say, hey, we offer drug testing, because nobody cares until they need it. However, we were able to drill into that pain point that I talked about earlier about, hey, struggling to manage all your DOT-based drug testing. We offer a one-size-fits-all platform that you can manage all your testing in one spot and order them all with a simple couple clicks of the mouse. There's this quick demo of that software there. And so again, though, a lot of people aren't going to be interested in this at the time that they see the ad. But the people that we can get interested in it, that are whale type of prospects, people that can do 5,000 tests a year, it's worth it to do that, because the back-end lifetime value of a client is huge. We could pay a lot to get somebody to be willing to buy at least one test from us using that particular software platform that's set up for bigger companies to manage all their testing through there. So in that particular case, we're paying $9.48 per transaction compared to the $105 over here. However, the lifetime value of a client over here was astronomically higher than it was here on Google, even though Google was still profitable. We were at a 1,705% lifetime value increase from our LinkedIn clients that we were getting versus what we were getting over here on Google. Partially because we're getting some individual consumers coming through, trying to check their own piss, see if they've been dirty for a drug test that's coming up. But also because it's a lot of smaller companies that need 5 tests a year, and then there's so much time between each test, they'll forget about who they used by the time the next test comes up. So that's a perfect example of where LinkedIn is going to come in much more handy and is much more profitable than Google, even though Google seems like always the easy answer because people are already looking for your product or service there. But it doesn't take that much of an offer. You have to have something even halfway good or interesting can be promoted on LinkedIn, and you can have it work because you can narrow down the ads to the size of companies that you want. You can literally target a list of companies if you want. You could say all the top 5,000 companies by revenue, just target them by itself. You could do that with LinkedIn now, or have been able to. We do that all the time. Because when it comes to B2B selling, the hardest thing to do is just get companies that are big enough. Well, with Google, you can't control the size of company who clicks on your ad. I mean, you can. I've talked about other ways to do this. Namely, you upload a customer list to Google of people that are bigger, and you use that to train the algorithms. You also use that to you upbid on those people so that if those people from those companies come through, you pay 10 times more per click to get them to click, and then you set the keyword bid lower or artificially low, so your ads essentially only show up for people that are bigger. But you get my point here. For that matter, by the way, these little details, these little tricks, if you will, I talk about these in length on this channel all the time. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, you should, because I go over all the little hidden Easter eggs of how to actually get B2B or B2C for that matter, campaigns to work. Subscribe if you haven't already, because you'll do yourself a huge favor learning how this stuff works. Not only that, but stuff to stay away from. I also got a fantastic blog on my site, by the way, at guaranteedppc.com/blog. The blog has step-by-step information on how to actually make money with ads, and I outline it with screenshots, everything you need to follow those strategies. If you like the channel, you're gonna like the blog as well. But yeah, I mean, that pretty well spells it out as far as Google versus LinkedIn here. Each have their own respective purposes when you're running a B2B company, trying to generate sales for yourself. The only question is, in 90% of markets, not if one of these is going to work or the other one isn't going to work. It's just how much can you get from each platform, given that you can modify what you're paying per click on Google so that you're paying less, but you're getting less clicks, but it's still profitable at the end of the day. And because you have control over whether your ads and landing pages are better than your competition, because if they are, Google's going to prefer to show you to the people that are more likely to convert, and you will make the money that the top guy there is already making. And then on LinkedIn, it's just simply a matter of, can you put together an offer that's going to be interesting enough? And then how far do you got to narrow down your targeting to get the ROI that you want? So anyway, with that said, if you want to partner with an agency that will invest in not only setting this up for you, but paying for your ad spend on top of it, we're looking for companies to do exactly that with. I run my agency at Guaranteed PPC. I own 100% of it. What I've decided to do with our resources is, instead of just working for clients on a monthly retainer, which we do, that's 90+% of our business still, at least at this time, we're looking to diversify our income into investing in actual companies. We give our companies that we work with and partner with ad spend and internal advertising agency management resources to run all your ads, landing pages, tracking, all of it. And we will take a cut of your future revenue moving forward as we become a part equity owner in your company. We've done this with several companies up to now, of which that are making multi-millions of dollars on the backs of what we did, and is working out very well. If you're looking to partner with us like that, and you got a product or service that you know is better than the competition, which is what we're looking for, we want to know that the company has legs of its own. We're not just going to make sales because we have good ads. But if you think you have that and you have everything covered but the advertising part of what you're doing, reach out to me and I'll consider, of course, investing in your company and partnering with you in that way. Furthermore, I've got a link. If you go down in the video description, you got a link to a fantastic group that I opened up, a Discord group where we're talking, that is the members of this channel. We're talking about the advertising strategies we're using. I answer questions within there, of which I also have a free PPC course that I should be charging money for. I give it away for free in that group. If you go ahead and you sign up for that group, you'll get that course for free as well. But with that said, I'm going to wrap it up with that. Thank you very much for watching as usual, and I'll see you on the next one. If you want to see another video, click here. It is one of my best ones.